We are officially living in the age of Ozempic. Since forever, the advice was always eat better, exercise more, live a disciplined lifestyle. And for a lot of people, it just didn't work, no matter how hard they tried. Diets failed, there wasn't enough motivation, and people felt ashamed or just plain gave up. So when drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro appeared, and people who had struggled their entire lives suddenly started losing weight and feeling better, it was nothing short of a miracle. But it wasn't just about being thinner or looking better. It was the relief of thinking maybe you weren't being lazy or broken after all. Maybe appetite really is biological and medicine is the answer. And honestly, the case for drugs like Ozempic and Mounjaro is pretty strong, stronger than critics often admit. They've really changed lives in measurable ways. People who were obese are now thin. Blood sugar stabilizes, health markers improve. For diabetics and people with serious metabolic disorders, these drugs are revolutionary. And beyond the lab results, there's the human impact. People feeling comfortable in their bodies for the first time, liking what they see in the mirror, moving through the world without constant self-consciousness. And a lot of people even report reduced cravings for smoking, alcohol, and other compulsive behaviors. Appetite control starts to feel like a gateway to a higher good, to being a better person. And of course, there's side effects, nausea and discomfort. But when the benefits are stacked against them, it's easy to see why so many people find the trade-off is worth it. So far from being a crutch, these drugs represent relief, dignity, and finally having something that works. Most of the criticism against the Ozempic focuses on the side effects. And on the surface, that makes sense. Nausea, digestive problems, long-term safety questions. So skeptics usually point to the side effects as the main concern. It's what makes these drugs problematic. But imagine for a moment that those problems were engineered away. Imagine that as technology improves, the side effects are reduced or eliminated entirely. Would that end the debate? Would all objections suddenly evaporate? The answer is no, because even in a world where the drug is perfectly safe and perfectly effective, something far more important is still being lost, sacrificed, traded away. But before I tell you what that is, there's also another side effect that often gets ignored. You see, these drugs don't just reduce hunger. They reduce pleasure in eating, making it less enjoyable. So meals suddenly become functional instead of meaningful opportunities to celebrate and bond through food. This is probably affecting society more than we think. Meals have anchored families and societies for thousands of years. It's one of humanity's oldest rituals, and it's quietly eroding. But that's not the real problem. Naming the deeper trade-off is too uncomfortable to talk about. Something more fundamental is being exchanged. Something many people sense but choose to turn a blind eye to. A dilemma we will ultimately face. You'll recognize this dilemma if you've seen or read The Lord of the Rings or the movie Limitless with Bradley Cooper. There are different stories circling the same truth. But long before either of them, Plato laid it out in his work, The Republic, with a story about the Ring of Gyges, a ring that grants invisibility, freeing its wearer from consequences. Gyges, an ordinary shepherd, discovers the ring and puts it on. He becomes invisible, enters the royal court, seduces the queen, plots to murder the king, and becomes ruler. Gyges crosses a line he never would have crossed before. Now, Plato wasn't interested so much in the crime itself. He was interested in character. What happens when virtue and its rewards are separated from the effort required to achieve it? When restraint, discipline, and self-mastery no longer require practice, something essential changes. The ring doesn't corrupt by force. It corrupts by removing resistance, and reveals the question that haunts every shortcut. Not whether the outcome looks good, but what kind of person is produced when effort disappears. Calling the erosion of character a side effect misses the point entirely. I mean, the outsourcing of effort and agency is in a category of its own. Yes, Ozempic has physical side effects. Yes, it has a social side effect, dulling communal life and weakening shared rituals, etc., etc. Those losses are bad enough, but they're still secondary. They affect what we do together, not who we are becoming. The deeper issue is this. Ozempic changes the relationship between effort and reward itself. It doesn't just alter outcomes. It replaces personal struggle with a mechanism. It reshapes how restraint is experienced, how discipline is formed, and how agency is felt from the inside. Instead of learning self-control through effort, the drug does the work for you. You don't learn it. Restraint is handed to you, ready-made. It's no longer you doing the work. This is not a medical consequence. It's really an anthropological one. It changes how people understand struggle, control, and responsibility. And because it doesn't appear on warning labels or blood tests, it remains largely invisible, even as it quietly rewires the human brain and ultimately who we are. When effort is removed, the consequences don't announce themselves right away. Life feels easier, hunger quiets, the struggles fade. Results arrive predictably. But beneath the surface, something starts to atrophy, to wither away. The habits that once had to be practiced stop being practiced. The inner muscles built through repetition, endurance, delay, self-denial, they go unused. And once one major area of life becomes effortless, an expectation forms that other areas should be effortless too. The will adapts to convenience. Difficulty starts to feel unnecessary, even unreasonable. It's suddenly foolish to put up with it. If you think this is just theoretical, look at the real-world outcomes. Multiple studies have shown that when people stop taking Ozempic, 100% of them regain all or more of the weight within a year. Not most people, not 90%, everyone. This isn't a moral failure. It's absolute proof of dependence. Nothing internal was built to replace what the drug was doing. You're just mush on the inside. The discipline wasn't learned, it was supplied. If restraint is no longer something you do, but something that happens to you, discipline ceases to be a skill and becomes a setting. And when the setting is removed, the skill is gone. The danger isn't relapse. The danger is that effort itself starts to feel obsolete. And with it, one of the primary ways human beings learn who they are. Now, this isn't an argument against medicine or against relieving suffering. It's an argument about what happens when effort itself becomes optional. If we can engineer the outcomes of virtue without the struggle that once formed it, what happens to agency, responsibility, and growth? Here's a question for you. Should we even bother teaching our children the value of effort, sacrifice, and self-denial when we know those things are no longer necessary to achieve the same results? Honestly, if discipline can be outsourced and struggle completely bypassed for adults, what exactly are we asking the children to practice? And for what purpose? The age of Ozempic doesn't just change how we live. It forces us to decide whether effort is still a virtue worth passing on, or merely an inconvenience we're quietly training the next generation to avoid. The dilemma Ozempic presents should feel familiar to most of us. That's because it belongs to the same category as the drug Bradley Cooper's character in Limitless took, the one that made him super intelligent, confident, and successful without any effort. It echoes the same logic at the heart of the Lord of the Rings, where power comes through possession rather than virtue. These aren't cautionary tales about what could happen. They are reflections of permanent truths about human nature. No one leaves the theater after watching the movie Limitless honestly believing they would have handled the drug any better, or finishes the Lord of the Rings thinking the story was naive or irrelevant. These stories endure because they tell the truth. Power without effort reshapes who we are. What's striking today is not that we keep telling these stories, but how quickly and easily we ignore them when a technology offers us a magic pill that claims to solve the problem.